Chair now recognizes the gentlelady from New Hampshire for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'd like to start today by recognizing the chairwoman for her attention and urgency to implement the Safe Connections Act. Last Congress, I led this legislation with my colleagues, Representative Eshoo and Wahlberg, to require phone companies to allow survivors of domestic violence to quickly separate their phone lines from shared plans with an abuser. A cell phone is a critical lifeline, enabling survivors to stay connected to support networks and to access assistance from hotlines or emergency services. As the founder and co-chair of the bipartisan task force to end sexual violence, I was proud to see this legislation signed into law to protect this lifeline for survivors. Chair Rosenworcel, can you share any updates on your agency's work to implement this law?
Thank you so much for your work on this law, along with Congresswoman Eshoo and Congressman Wahlberg. It's really important. 1 in 4 women in this country will face domestic violence, 1 in 9 men. And so before we even put pen to paper, what I did at the FCC was talk to experts in domestic violence. Because what I learned was the minute that somebody decides to get a new phone is the minute they decide to leave their abuser. It's really important. And that means the FCC has a really valuable role to play, and you gave us tools to do that in the Safe Connections Act. So we are working right now to identify what policies need to be put in place to make sure that someone can get out of their family plan fast, securely, and privately. Also putting policies in place to make sure that that individual can sign up for Lifeline or the Affordable Connectivity Program, and making sure that call logs do not reference domestic violence support systems so that people can call them safely and securely. Along the way, we've worked with the carriers that take all those calls and made sure that they're working with the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Because if somebody calls and wants to get off their family plan because they are leaving a domestic abuse situation, we want to make sure they don't get any old person who's answering the phone at the call center. We're going to make sure those individuals are actually trained to deal with this situation and can provide additional help and support. So you've put in place a very good thing, and I am confident that by next summer we're going to be able to act on it and have rules in place.
Great, thank you. This program will take needed steps to eliminate barriers for survivors and provide support as they rebuild their lives. Now, the Safe Connections Act also includes a provision to assist survivors who may be facing financial hardship and are unable to afford their phone plan, as you referenced. I understand the FCC is currently considering whether to dedicate the Affordable Connectivity Program to provide emergency communication support to survivors who have separated their phone plans. Unfortunately, as you know, the ACP is expected to exhaust its funding sometime next year. Chair Rosenworcel, if Congress were to fail to authorize renewed funding for the Affordable Connectivity Program, how could this affect survivors under the Safe Connections Act?
If Congress were to fail to appropriate new funds for the Affordable Connectivity Program, we would undermine the biggest broadband affordability program this nation has ever created it. We would cut families off, and we would also cut off survivors who rely on this program to stay connected and rebuild their lives.
Great, thank you very much. The ACP is already serving as a lifeline to the more than 18 million households that currently rely on this program to remain connected. In New Hampshire, over 30,000 households, including nearly 17,000 in my district, have signed up for the ACP, and more households are signing up every day. As co-chair of the Rural Broadband Caucus, I understand that addressing affordability is a crucial step toward closing the digital divide for rural households. Congress has already invested over $42 billion through the BEAD program to build broadband infrastructure in unserved and underserved communities. This is a once-in-a-generation investment in our nation's broadband infrastructure, but this investment will be wasted if Americans can't afford to pay for broadband services. The ACP helps to bridge this affordability gap. Now, I've also seen studies that estimate that the ACP can reduce the cost of broadband infrastructure in rural areas by up to 25% per household. That's not an insignificant cost savings. If we want federal dollars to go further in reaching our shared goal of closing the digital divide, we cannot let the ACP lapse just as the BEAD program is set to begin. Chairman Rosenworcel, would you agree?
I agree. I think the ACP program and the BEAD program work hand in glove. They work together. One attacks deployment, the other attacks subscribership. By working together, we're going to solve our digital divide.
Great, thank you so much. I appreciate your leadership of the agency, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back.